Imagine you are alone, not alone in your room, not alone in a crowd, alone in the middle of the ocean. No land, no people, no rescue, just water, sky, and time. Lots and lots of time. 438 days. That is 14 months. That is longer than a full year of your life. Today, I want to tell you the true story of a man who lived this nightmare. His name is Salvador Alvarenga. He was a fisherman. He was not a soldier. He was not an explorer. He was an ordinary man who faced something extraordinary. And because he survived, we have one of the most powerful stories ever told about the human spirit. But this is not just a story about survival. It is also a story about English. Because as we travel through those 438 days together, you will learn new words. You will hear them in context. You will understand them without a dictionary. Are you ready? Let us step onto the boat. Salvador Alvarenga lived in a small village on the coast of El Salvador. El Salvador is a country in Central America. It is small, but it is beautiful. The ocean is warm. The fish are plenty. And for a man like Alvarenga, the sea was not an enemy. It was a friend. He was 36 years old. He was strong. He was experienced. He had been fishing since he was a child. He knew the water. He knew the weather. He knew the fish. On November 17, 2012, Alvarenga went out on a normal fishing trip. It was supposed to be a short trip, just 30 hours. He and his young partner, Ezequiel Cordoba, planned to catch some sharks and sail back home. They had a small boat. It was about 7 meters long. It had a motor. It had a radio. It had a cooler for the fish. It had everything they needed for a quick, successful trip. The weather was good. The sun was shining. The water was calm. But the ocean is a master of deception. Deception means a trick. It means something that looks safe, but is actually dangerous. The ocean looked peaceful, but a storm was coming. A storm that would change everything. 2 days after they left, the sky turned black, not gray, black. The wind began to scream. The waves began to grow, and I do not mean small waves. I mean waves as tall as buildings. Waves that rose up like mountains and crashed down like thunder. Alvarenga tried to start the motor. It was dead. He tried to use the radio. It was dead. He tried to find their location. The GPS was dead. In minutes, everything they relied on was gone. Relied on means depended on. Relied on means depended on. It means they needed these things to survive, and now they had nothing. The storm was so powerful that it pushed their boat far, far away from land. They were not just off the coast anymore. They were drifting into the open ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean on Earth. Ezequiel was only 22 years old. He was terrified. Terrified means extremely afraid, so afraid that your body shakes, so afraid that you cannot think clearly. Alvarenga was afraid too, but he had to be strong. He had to be the leader, because if both men panicked, they would both die. For 5 days, the storm attacked them. Rain, wind, waves that tried to flip the boat. They had no food, no fresh water, no shelter. They just held on. They held on to the boat, to hope, and to each other. When the storm finally ended, the ocean was silent again. But the silence was worse than the storm, because now they looked around, and they saw nothing. Nothing but blue water in every direction. They were lost. Not just a little lost. They were completely lost. They had no idea where they were. They had no idea which direction was land. They had no compass, no map, no phone. They were 2 men in a broken boat floating in an ocean that covers 1/3 of the Earth. The first few days they still had hope. They thought a ship would see them. They thought a plane would fly over. They thought someone would rescue them, but no ship came, no plane came, no rescue. The sun was burning their skin, the salt water was cracking their lips, their throats were so dry that swallowing felt like swallowing sand. Despair began to creep in. Despair means the feeling that you have lost all hope. It is when you believe things will never get better. It is one of the most dangerous emotions a human can feel, because despair does not just hurt your mind, it can kill your will to live. Ezekiel cried. He wanted his mother. He wanted to go home. He was so young. He was not ready for this. Alvarenga tried to comfort him. He told him stories. He told him jokes. He told him they would survive, but inside, Alvarenga was also breaking. Then, something happened that gave them a tiny spark of hope. They caught a turtle. A turtle. It sounds strange, but that turtle saved their lives. They caught it, and they drank its blood. Yes, you heard that correctly, they drank the blood of the turtle. Why? Because blood contains liquid. And in the middle of the ocean, liquid is more valuable than gold. Valuable means very important, very useful, very precious. They also ate the meat of the turtle. It was raw, it had no salt, it had no fire to cook it. But it was food, and food meant energy, and energy meant life. After the turtle, Alvarenga began to understand something. If they were going to survive, they could not just wait for rescue. They had to become hunters. They had to adapt. Adapt means to change your behavior to survive in a new situation. Fish do not survive in the desert. Humans do not survive in the ocean unless they adapt. Alvarenga began to catch fish with his bare hands. He learned to pull them from the water and squeeze them until they stopped moving. He learned to eat them raw, including the eyes, the bones, and the organs. Every part of the fish contained something his body needed. He caught birds that landed on the boat. He drank their blood. He ate their meat. He collected rainwater when it fell. He used plastic bottles and containers that floated by. Yes, the ocean gave them trash, and that trash became treasure. But here is the truth about survival. The body is strong. The body can survive without food for weeks. The body can survive without water for days. But the mind is fragile. Fragile means easily broken. The mind is fragile. Fragile means easily broken. The mind needs hope. Like the body needs water. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the biggest enemy was not the ocean. It was loneliness. 438 days is not just a number. Let me help you understand it. Imagine missing your birthday, missing Christmas, missing New Year. Not once, but twice. Imagine never hearing a voice except your own. Imagine never seeing a face except the face of your companion. Imagine never touching solid ground, never sleeping in a bed, never eating warm food, never hearing music. For 14 months, Alvarenga began to talk to himself. He began to imagine things. He saw land that was not there. He heard voices that were not real. He dreamed of his mother cooking tortillas. He could smell the food. He could taste it. Then he would wake up and the smell was gone. The taste was gone. And the ocean was still there. He had to fight to keep his mind. He had to remember who he was. He was not just a body floating on water. He was a man. He was a father. He had a daughter. He had a family waiting for him. He used his memories as a weapon against the darkness. But not everyone can fight forever. Ezekiel, the young fisherman, began to get sick. He could not keep food down. His body was rejecting the raw fish and the turtle meat. He was becoming weaker and weaker. He stopped talking. He stopped moving. He just lay on the floor of the boat, staring at the sky. Alvarenga tried everything. He caught the best fish for him. He gave him the rainwater first. He held his hand and told him they would see land soon. But Ezekiel knew. They both knew. One day, Ezekiel looked at Alvarenga and said, "I am going to die. Please do not eat me." Then he closed his eyes, and he never opened them again. Alvarenga was alone. Alone does not even describe it. He was the only human being in a space larger than all the continents combined. He held his friend's body for 6 days. He could not let him go. He talked to him. He asked him for forgiveness. He asked him for strength. Then, with tears mixing with salt water, he pushed the body into the ocean. And he was truly alone. What does it feel like to be the only person alive? Some people say Alvarenga began to feel like a god, not a powerful god, a lonely god, a god who created a world of water and could not escape it. He stopped counting the days. What was the point? Time had no meaning. There was no Monday, no Friday, no morning meeting, no dinner time. There was only light and dark, hot and cold, hunger and thirst. He began to hallucinate. Hallucinate means to see things that are not really there. He saw a woman walking on the water. He saw his daughter waving from the shore. He saw cars, houses, and streets. He knew they were not real, but they felt real. And sometimes he chose to believe in them, because believing in a fake world was better than accepting the real one. He sang songs. He told himself stories. He remembered every conversation he had ever had. He rebuilt his entire life in his mind, piece by piece, like a puzzle. He refused to let the ocean take his mind, and that refusal is what saved him. On January 30th, 2014, something appeared on the horizon. At first, Alvarenga thought it was another hallucination, just another trick of his tired mind. But it did not disappear. It grew. It was brown. It was green. It had trees. It was land. Alvarenga could not believe it. He stared at it for hours, afraid that if he blinked, it would vanish. But it was real. It was an island, a tiny island called Ebon Atoll in the Marshall Islands. He was more than 6,000 miles from where he started. 6,000 miles. That is like crossing the entire United States 2 times. He swam toward the shore. His legs were weak. His body was thin. His skin was burned and cracked. But he swam. When he reached the beach, he could not stand. He crawled. He crawled onto the sand, and he kissed it. He kissed the ground like it was the face of his mother. A local woman found him. She was terrified. He looked like a ghost. He was covered in hair. His clothes were rags. He could barely speak, but he was alive. 438 days. He had done the impossible. Now, let me ask you something. What is the longest you have ever been alone? A day? A weekend? A week? How did you feel? Bored? Sad? Anxious? Now multiply that feeling by 438. Salvador Alvarenga did not survive because he was the strongest man. He did not survive because he was the smartest. He survived because he refused to give up. He used his memories as a shield. He used his imagination as a weapon. He adapted to a world that was trying to kill him every single day. And here is where this story meets your English journey. Every day you are learning something new, a new word, a new sound, a new way to express yourself. And sometimes it feels difficult. Sometimes it feels difficult. Sometimes you feel like you are lost in an ocean of grammar and vocabulary. You feel like you will never reach the shore, but you will, because every word you learn is a step closer to land. Every story you listen to is a boat carrying you forward. Every mistake you make is just a wave you must ride. You are not just learning English. You are building the same muscle that Salvador Alvarenga used to survive. The muscle of patience. The muscle of persistence. The muscle of refusing to quit. Before we finish, let us review the words we learned today. Deception. A trick. Something that looks safe but is dangerous. The ocean looked peaceful, but it was a deception. Relied on, depended on. They relied on their motor and radio, but both failed. Terrified, extremely afraid. Ezekiel was terrified during the storm. Despair. The feeling of losing all hope. The most dangerous enemy was despair. Valuable, very important and precious. Water was more valuable than gold. Adapt to change to survive in a new situation. Alvarenga had to adapt to the ocean. Fragile, easily broken. The mind is more fragile than the body. Hallucinate to see things that are not real. Alvarenga began to hallucinate after months alone. Alone, having no one else near. He was alone in the largest ocean on Earth. Write these words down. Use them in a sentence. Make them yours. Salvador Alvarenga is alive today. He wrote a book about his experience. He still lives in El Salvador. He still looks at the ocean. But now he knows its secret. He knows that the ocean does not just take, it also teaches. It teaches us that the human spirit is stronger than any storm. If this story awakened something in you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories that turn history into power, language into adventure, and learning into something you feel deep in your chest, subscribe to Awakening Avenue. This is where stories do not just teach English, they ignite something inside you. Drop a comment below. Which survival story should we awaken next? Until next time, my friends, keep learning, keep listening, and never forget, the shore is closer than you think.